Hi everyone, this is Taylor Saul with Applied CX. Thanks for attending our SAP Integration Demonstration with Teamcenter. This is done by the Siemens Enterprise Integration team. The product is T4S. We've had several of our customers that have very successful integrations with SAP, having simultaneous bilateral communication with Teamcenter. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about this product or the integration itself, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Taylor Saul, TSAUL at appliedcax.com. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay, I'll get started. I'm in the Enterprise Integration Group. I've got a couple of slides I'll go through. So first of all, just kind of talking a little bit about the some of the key requirements that we have when we talk about software integration. So obviously the main one we want to talk about is the connectability. The whole purpose of an integration is to connect multiple systems together. And we need to be able to support all of the required processes within those systems. So the gateway we're going to show today is the T4S gateway. It is an application, what we call an application aware gateway. So it knows SAP. So it already knows how to send some of this data to SAP. So we don't have to build this integration from scratch. We already know when we want to create a material master, what SAP BAPIs do we need to call. And then within that, we need to be able to support the semantics between these two applications. So Teamcenter is a very customizable application, and SAP is also a very customizable application. So we need to be able to tweak the interface in order to make these two highly customizable applications be able to talk to each other. The next thing we want to talk about is usability. The integration needs to be reliable. The whole idea of making these two systems talk to each other is so that we can have reliable data in both systems. We don't want to get to the place where unintegrated systems are, where people are manually typing data from one system into another. That can be very error prone. And it's slow. So we want to have high performance. We want to be able to get this data from one system to the other in a decent time frame, i.e. not I send an email and 2 days later, I don't know if that data has been manually inputted or not. We want it to be transparent to the users. So from a user standpoint, they don't need to know what's going on in the background. The integration is just handling all of that for them. And then it also needs to be upgradable and maintainable. So the gateway is tied to Teamcenter, but it enables the upgrade process to be broken out. You don't have to upgrade the gateway every time you upgrade SAP, and you don't have to upgrade the gateway every time you upgrade Teamcenter. So that enables, from an IT standpoint, these upgrades to be planned and rolled out at separate times, causing less disruption to the organization. Next thing is the manageability. So with all this work going on through the gateway, we need to be able to monitor what's happening. And if and when things go wrong, we need to be able to find out what went wrong, what we need to do to fix it, to get that data transfer back on track. So we'll be seeing in the demo, we have an admin console that handles all of our scheduling and all of our logging and transfers. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit, just one slide, about our implementation methodology and how we go about setting this up and getting these two systems to talk to each other reliably using the Teamcenter gateway. So next slide, just a couple of little things on how we do the integrations. So there's 4 main things that we talk about when we're discussing an integration. The first one is what we call data transfer. So this is the moving of data from one system to another. So for the SAP case, taking an item from Teamcenter and creating a material master in SAP using the data based on that item. Same for change, maybe we take an ECM from SAP and we create an engineering change inside Teamcenter. Next one is process integration. So it's very rare in this day and age that an entire business process is wholly contained within one system. So for example, a change process, you might get a change request coming in through SAP, it's reviewed, someone decides that requires an engineering change. So we start an engineering change process inside Teamcenter. CAD models are modified and updated, then the engineering change is fed back into SAP. where purchasing would pick it up and start sourcing suppliers and vendors for those modified parts, getting all the costing together, and then the changes closed out in SAP. So it's very rare we see all of that occur in one system. So we need to be able to integrate those business processes between those two systems. Then the third thing we talk about in integration is what we call data federation. This is similar to the data transfer, except we're not actually moving data between two systems. This is really giving us the ability to view SAP data from inside Teamcenter. This is very powerful. It enables users to access that data and see it, make decisions based on information in SAP without ever having to leave the Teamcenter application or be trained in SAP. They can, and I'll show this in the demo, just pull up a little window, get the information they need from SAP, make their decisions, select their part, whatever it is they need to do, and get on with their work without ever having to leave and log out. And then the last thing is our admin console, and this really handles the reliability portion of the integration. It does all of our monitoring, it does all of our logging. It's also got our scheduler inside it, so we can schedule when tasks are going to be performed. It does the load balancing, so if we're integrating huge quantities of data, we can break that up and split it out over multiple servers to enable that transfer to happen in a timely manner. Okay, just a little bit more about the solution. So we talked a little bit before about the process integration, and we really do that through the workflows. So we use Teamcenter workflows to trigger the gateway. We use the workflows in the downstream system, in this case SAP, and we can trigger status changes between both systems. So on a workflow step in Teamcenter, we can change the status of an object in SAP, or vice versa. We can, on a status change in SAP, have that trigger a workflow inside Teamcenter, and so on. We can also then integrate with other downstream systems using our T4EA application, so we can then send some of that data maybe to the shop floor systems or to other downstream systems. So the gateway provides a collaborative framework between Teamcenter and the enterprise applications. So it's a full bidirectional integration, so we can push and pull data from both systems. It enables us to expand those business processes and workflows beyond just the range of Teamcenter, which gives those users that warm, fuzzy feeling that the data they're seeing is the correct data. They're seeing what they need to see at the right time they need to see it inside their workflow. And on the other end, once I release a part in Teamcenter, I know it's been pushed to SAP, I know the correct status has been set, and I then know the workflows in SAP have kicked off so that the people who need it can pick up on those things. And I don't need to think, do I need to send an email to so-and-so to let them know I've released my part? And then we support a wide range of very complex processes. So the workflows don't have to be simple one-step workflows, as we're going to show in the demo. They can be very complicated release processes with multi-step approvals, and they can go back and forth between these systems. We've done many of these integrations where we will wait in Teamcenter for something to happen in SAP, and then we'll progress the workflow forward in Teamcenter once that action's been performed. And then the last box there, we've got the data view. I'll show that in the demo. And like I said, that just gives us a window into SAP so that users can view data that is not necessary to store inside Teamcenter and difficult to keep up to date, so constantly changing data. We can see that in SAP without having to leave Teamcenter, go into SAP, remember the right transaction code in SAP, remember the right tab to look at to go see that data. We can present it to the users with data across multiple transaction codes and multiple tabs in SAP in a single view inside the Teamcenter interface. Just a little bit about our product portfolio. So we're talking a lot today about T4S, our gateway for SAP. But we have multiple other flavors of the gateway. So we have a T4O, which is our Oracle integration, and T4EA, which we use to integrate to every other enterprise platform that isn't SAP or Oracle. But we're leveraging the same framework for all of these integrations. The way we get the data out of Teamcenter is the same regardless of which one we use. So if you were to want to expand to other areas, we can easily add T4EA on top of your SAP T4S implementation and leverage a lot of the work that's already been done to push data out to other systems. And then we have a couple of others, one's out, one's in the works with our Camstar integration and our Somatic IT integration. And then we have our T4 CPG, which is for our consumer packaged goods. But again, all of those are leveraging the same core framework. The way we get the data from Teamcenter and the way we process it is all leveraged across a common gateway platform. So a little bit about our transfer methodology. So in order to do a transfer, we need a trigger. So something has to tell the integration that I want to send a piece of data between two systems. And there's really three ways that we can do that. The first one is through a menu. So we have a menu, a user can click on that and kick off an integration to send, let's just say, an item from Teamcenter and create a material master in SAP. We tend not to use that too much as there's very little control on it. We much prefer to use a workflow-driven integration. So that's where I've created my part in Teamcenter. I've worked on it. Once it reaches a level of maturity, I place it into a workflow. There's maybe a review. And at that point, once I'm satisfied with that part, that's where I will then send it over to SAP. We can also have event-driven or schedule-driven integration. But again, the most common one we use is the workflow-based integrations. We also have data synchronization. So this is where, as a scheduled task or a background job, we can, every day at midnight, kick off a job to search Teamcenter for any new parts with a certain status and go create the corresponding material masters in SAP for those parts. Or go find anything in SAP where the status has changed to flag for deletion or obsolete and update the status in Teamcenter to reflect that change in SAP. And then we have our data view, which is really an on-demand integration. So every time I click on that tab, we go and query SAP in the background and display that latest information to the user at that point in time. So this is just a little slide at a high level on how we do this. So the first thing is some sort of authentication. We need to be able to log in and access both of these systems in order to read and write data to them. So we do have an authentication suite. We can do user-to-user mapping if need be. If the user in Teamcenter has a corresponding user in SAP, we can do that mapping. But most times we're setting up a proxy user that has an ability to read the data and write the data to Teamcenter, and that user has a corresponding user in SAP that has that same ability to read and write to the data that's required. Once we're able to authenticate in both systems, then we can get to the core of the integration, and that's transferring the data. So when we talk about data transfer, there's a couple of things we really need to think about. What data needs to be sent from what system, and where does it need to be put in the other system? So when we talk about an item transfer, we're taking an item revision from Teamcenter and creating a corresponding material master in SAP. How do we want to map that data? How do we want to create the part number or the material master number? What fields from Teamcenter need to go to what fields in SAP? All of that is handled inside our mapping engine with what we call mapping templates. So for each transfer type, we create a mapping template that tells the integration, go grab this field from Teamcenter and put it in this location in SAP. We use a scripting language for those templates. TCL is the language we use. So they're very powerful. We can, I like to say, if it can be scripted, we can do it. So as long as it's a logical transformation of data, we can do it. Some of the common things we see are concatenation of fields. So in Teamcenter, we might enter the information in 2 or 3 different fields, but in SAP, that's going to go into one field. So we can take the contents of those fields, separate them with dashes or slashes or commas or whatever it needs to be, and write that into a single field in SAP. Things like date formats often come up. The way Teamcenter stores its dates is not necessarily the same month, day, year order that SAP uses to store its dates. Europeans write their dates differently than Americans. So within that mapping templates, we're able to move around those pieces of data to get it into the correct format that the receiving system needs it to be in. Once we've done that data manipulation, then we can write it to that other system. And we have several different options that we can use depending on the system. For SAP, we are generally calling SAP BAPIs directly. So for the material master create, we're going to call BAPI material save data, feed it the information it needs, and have that write that information to SAP. We don't just call that one BAPI. We do have a lot of checks and balances in there. We do checks to make sure the material exists before we send it, and we check it exists again after we send it, so that we know the material was properly created inside SAP. There are some fields that we can't write to on create. The gateway, as I said, is application aware. It knows that. So if we're trying to send data to certain fields and we know we have a problem writing to them, the gateway is smart enough to say, go create the material, then do a second transfer to update it so that we can write to those fields. So all of that is handled inside this business process and mapping engine. And then on the back end there, we have our admin tool suite. And as I said, that does all of our monitoring, all of the log checking, and does all of that schedule task management. Okay, so last slide. The last thing I wanted to talk about is our integration implementation methodology. So within Siemens, we have something that we call the advantage methodology, and it's really just a defined process for getting the most out of our integration. We start with the affirm value phase, and that's really just to make sure all the business goals are aligned. That what we're talking about doing with the integration is what you're expecting us to do with that integration. We look at the end-to-end processes. We don't like to focus on one little piece. We like to look at the overall picture to make sure what we're building fits in with where you want to be phase one, but any other phases that might come along. And we like to set the right expectations up front so that you know what you're going to get before we start building this solution. Once everyone's on the same page, then we go into our validate solution definition phase, which is where we're going to build out this integration. We'll start working on those mapping templates. We'll start doing that data manipulation, picking the right information out of Teamcenter, running it through the process and putting it in the right place in SAP. We like to consider all of the requirements in detail, and we want to validate each of those requirements against the solution. And then, like I said, that's an iterative process. So if we're missing a requirement, we'll go back through and make sure and keep working the solution until we're meeting all of the agreed upon requirements. And that was it on the slide side. I will get going and show a live integration. So live integration. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a brand new item inside Teamcenter. And this is just an out-of-the-box Teamcenter item. Oops. On. And I'm not original with my part naming. So I'm just creating a brand new item. So there we go, created. Let's pull that up. So this could be a part, a document, a purchased item, whatever it happens to be. In this case, I'm thinking in the terms of a part. So it could be a piece of a hub or a bit of a wheel. I create create it in Teamcenter. I would work on it in Teamcenter, add the CAD, add some specifications, add some definition. At some point, I'm going to say, this is now mature enough and ready to be sent to SAP. So as I said, there's a few different ways that we can transfer it. The first is the least favorite, which is through the menu. So I'm just going to select that item, come down here, and choose to create it directly in SAP. Once I do that, click perform. This is now triggering the gateway in the background. it knows that this is a material master create that I want to do in SAP, so it's calling up that material master template, mapping template. It's going in, logging into SAP and creating this part directly. And our demo instance of SAP is not the fastest. Okay, so this part has now been sent to SAP. So I can check that I'm doing what we call reverse mapping. So I write some information back to the item. I'll just pull up my viewer. So here I'm using some out of the box fields on one of the forms. I'm giving a status message that it worked. I'm date stamping when the part was transferred. And I'm also transferring back the material master number from SAP. Now in this particular instance, my material master number happens to be the same as my item ID in Teamcenter, but that is not always the case. We can have a different item ID in Teamcenter to the material master number in SAP. So now that I've transferred this part, I'm able to show you what I think is one of the coolest things in the world. Well, maybe not in the world, our data view. So what's happening here is I've just clicked on that item revision. The query's running in the background. It's just finished now. And I'm viewing this information from SAP. So here's that material master number I created in SAP, the material type I created, unit of measure I gave, industry sector, some other things like that. So now, just to show, I will jump over to SAP and do an MMO2. Find that material, pull up my views. So here is that material in SAP, created. As you see here, I transferred my item description from Teamcenter into the description in SAP. Did I transfer anything else? Not really. So now I'm going to come and I'm in SAP. I have this open to change. I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to add a weight of 500 kilograms. And I'm going to save that change. Save, there it is. Okay, so now that I've made that change, I'm just going to do a quick refresh on here. And my data view is now showing that information from SAP. So this is giving me that window into SAP without having to store any of this information in Teamcenter. So taking the question from a minute ago, we could very easily send the data from the CAD model from Teamcenter to SAP. Once they create that real part and have it in the factory, they could weigh it and update that weight in SAP. In my data view, I can now see this is what the weight is in SAP, compare it to what I have the weight in the CAD, and maybe I want to make a little change to my weight calculation for the CAD side. We could also write those to two different fields and so on. But just to kind of give an example of how we can read that information back from SAP. Okay, so that was menu-based transfer and the data view. So now I'm just going to quickly create another new item and we'll do the workflow-based transfer. Oops. That's part 2. Yes. Okay, so same thing, just created an item in Teamcenter. Imagine, if you will, that I'd been working on it for a little while, maturing it, adding information to it. I get to the point where I'm ready to send this over to SAP. So I'm just going to come down here, choose new workflow process. Down here, there it is. There we go. And I have a couple of workflows that I can use to send. So for my material transfer, I have a very simplified workflow. Again, in a real world production environment, this would usually be built in as part of the regular workflow for that item, be it the release process or the review process. And at some point in that workflow, we'd want to send to SAP. When we do that, there's basically 2 workflow steps that we do. The first one here, we check that SAP is available. We've learned from experience, if SAP is down, we can't transfer items to it. So before we begin the workflow and the transfer, we just check that SAP is online. And then the second step, just click OK, is to actually transfer this part to SAP. So this workflow is running now. We're kicking off the gateway. We're pinging SAP, make sure it's available. We get a positive answer back from that. We move forward. We're then invoking that exact same mapping template that we used for the menu-driven transfer. I don't have to have two separate templates for how I trigger the transfer. And now this other part has been sent over to SAP. So now that it's sent, I can click on the data view and I should get a result back from SAP. There we go. Just give that a minute. There we are. So now Ian test part 2 has also been sent to SAP. So this is just simple item transfers. We can also send bill of materials. So I'm going to, again, create another quick part. And we'll make a very simple bill of materials and send that over. So I'm just going to select those two, choose my assembly, go over into Teamcenter Structure Manager and build myself a simple bill of material.
And just to kind of talk a little bit here, what Ian's doing would happen automatically through the CAD tools. The structure manager would automatically be created based on the CAD model. This is just Ian trying to show you how it's done through a manual process.
Yes, correct. So I'm just building a manual bill of materials, but again, with the NX or with the CAD integration, this bill of materials would be built for you from the CAD tool. Yep. Okay, so now I have a bill of materials. I want to send it over to SAP. So I'm going to choose my transfer bill of materials workflow. Again, a simplified workflow. Check SAP is available, send the bill of materials. Now, I always like to say this first so people don't think I made a mistake. When I click OK on this, I am going to get an error message. And the reason I do that is I want to show you how T4S handles some of these error situations. So I'm just going to click OK. It's still going to go and check that SAP is available. But when I come to transfer my bill of materials now, we're going to run into a problem. And that problem is I just created a brand new assembly inside Teamcenter, so a new item. I'm now trying to send a bill of materials. In this particular scenario, I'm only trying to update the bill of materials, but I forgot to transfer my item over. So I don't yet have a material master in SAP that corresponds to this CM number 3 assembly. So what happens then is when the gateway tries to create that bill of materials, I get an error message back from SAP. So what we do then is we pass that error message back through to the Teamcenter user. Now there's a lot we can do. We can pass that message, we can reformat it. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm letting the user know that the workflow started okay, but at some point I ran into an issue. And that issue was that the material I'm trying to add this bill of materials to does not yet exist in SAP or has not been activated. So I am not able to add a bill of materials. I can't add a parent-child relationship if I don't have one of the objects. So there's a couple of ways I could fix this. I could select this item, go back to my menu and manually push it over. I could start my material master transfer and send this object over. But what I'm going to do is show that we don't always have to run into these issues. I have another workflow. So this workflow is a combination of 3 different workflows. If I was using change management, it accounts for the change. Then it goes and transfers any material masters over to SAP. Once all the material masters have been transferred, then I'll build the bill of materials. So what I could have done for this demo is I could have created all 3 objects in Teamcenter, built the bill of materials and sent them all over in one push. Would make this demo a lot shorter. but probably wouldn't show as much. So I'm just going to select OK on this workflow, and the gateway is now going to go through, update or create any of the material masters associated to this workflow, and then build that bill of materials. So while that's going through, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to jump over and show our admin console. So this is our BGS, our basic gateway service for T4S. And this is the admin console. This is where I handle all that logging. So if I come down to the menu, there's several different options here. The one I'm interested in is the logs, and I want to see the logs for my transactions. Let's give that a refresh. So here I can see all of the transactions that I've performed so far today. So the first are those 2 material transfers. The first one here, the create HID MM portal, is the one I did through the menu. This is the one that I did through the workflow. This is the one that failed. So this is the one I'm most interested in. Why did this fail? So again, for this particular instance, the message I got in Teamcenter was very descriptive, but this log is then, ooh, Teamcenter's back. This log is telling me a little bit more about what I sent to SAP and what those returns were. And again, it's just letting me know that my material hadn't been created. So now if I click refresh, I can now see 2 more transactions happen. The first was that CMO3 got created, and then its bill of materials was successfully updated. So I now have the new object and the bill of materials created in SAP. And I can just jump over to SAP and verify that I have what I believe I should have. CS03. Plant. Don't come out as bomb usage 2, I think. Bomb not found in plant. Okay, let me check what plant I sent it to and what bomb usage. Maybe it was 1.
And he's looking in the logs right now where the administrator could review all those transactions.
Okay, I haven't remembered what I sent. So again, if I'm unsure of anything, I like to come in and just check the logs, see what I did send.
Yeah, I think it was the wrong part number.
Ah, thank you. I did use the wrong part number. Thank you very much. There we are. Thank you. So here we are. If I select the correct part, I can now see it has the bill of materials here. So the last thing I wanted to show, I think we got enough time, was some updates. So the very observant of you will notice that when I created my bill of materials in Teamcenter, I didn't actually add any quantities. Yet when it comes over to SAP, I have a quantity of 1. This is just something I chose to do in my mapping file. I have in there some logic that says, if the quantity field in Teamcenter is null, make it a 1 when I send it to SAP. I could have chosen to say, if the quantity field in Teamcenter is null, make it write back an error message saying you haven't entered bill of material quantities, circle it back to the user, have them do that, then send to SAP. For the purposes of this demo, I chose to let the gateway process my mistake for me and fix it on my behalf. So if I now come back to my BOM, there are my missing quantities. So I can fix my mistake, add a couple of values in, and maybe I want to restructure this BOM. So I'm just going to come and change this fine number from a 10 to a 30, and remember to save my changes. Now I can come back to my home screen. I can pick my simplify because I now know all of those items exist in SAP. I've made no changes to the material master, just to the bill of materials. I can click OK. As that transfer goes through, I'll just come out of here. So when it's done, I can see the change. I can come back into my admin client for the gateway and check the progress. This isn't really something an end user would ever be expected to do. This is, again, our admin client. So the gateway administrator would be in here monitoring all these transactions. Give it a second to run through. There we go. All finished. It's green, went through successfully. Back to SAP. And here we have my BOM. We can see here that those quantities have been updated. And my bill of materials now is aligned to Teamcenter. That's it for all I had to show you today.
Great, thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you everyone for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, great
Thanks,
stuff.
everybody. Have a good weekend.